University of Cape Town Senate voted, and now the Rhodes statue will be moved from the university's campus. But where will it go? The statue of Rhodes had human excrement, urine and pig manure thrown at it, and after UCT students spoke up about removing it for what they call institutional racism, others across the country have also started to follow in their footsteps, as there are still many historic statues some think are symbols of oppression. So do these statues have a place in South Africa today? To talk to us about this, we are joined from Cape Town by Dr Adekeye Adebajo, the Director for the Centre for Conflict Resolution. A very good morning to you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Doctor, why do you think it's taken so long, more than 20 years into the democratic process, for a debate to emerge around the legacy of the likes of Cecil John Rhodes?
I think there was a feeling, particularly with Nelson Mandela as the first democratic president of South Africa, promoting reconciliation, that it was probably better to leave the past and focus on the present, and a feeling that there were other priorities that needed to be taken care of. But I think 20 years later now, part of that has gone, part of that rationale has gone, and people are now beginning to question entrenched histories and symbols that are very oppressive and offensive for the majority of the population.
Within that context that you're talking about now, is there a place for this statue to be? If so, where do you believe would be the right place for this, a statue like that of a Cecil John Rhodes?
I think it's very important to note, as many of the students that are protesting have themselves said, that they don't want to destroy history and erase it and wipe it away as if it hasn't happened. And their suggestion was to put this statue in a museum where one could provide a context for the sort of character Cecil Rhodes was, who was an imperialist, a plunderer, a racist, and one can put it in a museum where that context is actually provided. And I agree with the suggestion of the students that that's a good way of preserving history while not forgetting it.
Within this context now, this small battle has been won. What do you think this means for other symbols around South Africa? We see somewhat of a groundswell starting to happen. Do you see that happening more and more? And what are your views on it?
Well, I think we have seen it happening more and more. You know, there was a statue of King George at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, which has been defaced. And you've had questioning of Louis Botha standing outside of the South African Parliament and people like Julius Malema calling for it to be removed. I think that it's healthy to have a debate and a discussion on what the symbols are that actually litter the post-apartheid landscape and what they mean to various people. And one thing that's often pointed out is that the symbols of apartheid domination, people like Verwoerd and others, were removed after 1994. But British symbols like Cecil Rhodes, like the King George that I mentioned, were a lot slower. So my feeling is that it's healthy to have the debate, but one should also consult and listen to other views that may not agree, and at least try to convince them of the wisdom of it, while, of course, going through normal processes.
Doctor, what about flaring up racial tensions and opening new wounds for a younger generation in South Africa that seem to have moved on a little bit? Is this not cannon fodder for those that want to deepen racial division in South Africa?
I don't actually think so, because when I saw the 500 students that were demonstrating at the University of Cape Town, one of the things I found most impressive is that it was a multiracial protest. And when I watched also the discussions and debates at the University of Cape Town on the removal of the statue, it was both black and white students and so-called coloreds and Asians that were speaking up against the statue and against symbols. And I think what is important here to realize, listening to the students, they are saying that the statue is only a metaphorical symbol for greater institutional racism at some of these institutions. And they're talking about curriculums needing to be changed, black professors teaching them, and these seem to be quite reasonable things. So I see this as progress rather than fueling racial tensions.
Officially, what would you like to see happen next in the process of dealing with the issues of statues and call it symbols of oppression?
Well, I mean, I think the dialogue that has been ignited by the students at the University of Cape Town needs to continue. And I think there's a process where the Heritage Council and the government has to consult in some cases with various populations to determine what happens in terms of these statues. But I do think it's important to try to find imaginative ways of dealing with it. For example, Freedom Park was juxtaposed with the Voortrekker Monument, which is preserving two histories. And I think in some cases there could be ways of doing that as well, but it's a very important dialogue that has started.
Doctor, I thank you for joining us and giving us your views on this very emotive subject here in South Africa. Thank you once again. That's the director of the Centre for Conflicts Resolution, coming to you live from Cape Town, Dr Adekeye Adebajo. He's the director there. Let's have a quick look at your tweets. What do you say?